This movie is excellent. It was filmed on location in New York. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces in this film that went on to many, many great things. A lot of people that worked off of Broadway and so forth. But first, to tell you more about the movie and how he got his part is our special guest star tonight. I can't tell you how thrilled I am that we have Stuart Whitman here with us tonight. This is somebody that I grew up with.
I was on contract to 20th Century Fox Studios, and if you people don't know what that means, it means you come to work and they can say, go to casting and pick up a script and go to London or France or New York, as they did with me, to New York to do Murder, Inc. And I said, well, what's it about? I was only there a short time. I think I did 3 movies for them at that time. And they said, Murder, Inc. And I said, oh, wow. Okay, well, go to casting, pick up the script, and they'll give you instructions of when your plane is leaving. I read it and I said, oh, wow, this is the guy. This is the guy. He's the lead, I think, and that's the guy. And that was a role that I discovered after I got to New York, got in the limousine, went to the hotel, and the fella said to me, well, you have the lead, but I don't think it's the lead part. And I said, well, Abe Relis, that's the part, right? He said, no, you're doing this other part. And I was so disappointed because as a kid, I was born in San Francisco and went to, I was 3 years old or 4, went to Brooklyn. That's where my dad was from. I moved in with my grandmother, my grandfather, and there must have been 13 nephews and cousins living there too. It was impossible in those days. And my cousins, the oldest ones, I said, they call me Blackie. Said, Blackie, don't mess with those kids that you're playing with. Well, why can't I? They're my pals. And they said, well, they belong to the bad guys, really bad guys. I said, what is a bad guy? They kill people. So I was still hanging out with those pals of mine, but I'd sneak around so that I wouldn't see these guys. They looked like humans, but at any rate. Okay, so now I arrive in Manhattan, and there was a driver to pick me up, take me to the hotel. And he said, have you met Peter Falk? And I said, no. He says, well, he's going to make one hell of a Abe Relis. And I said, no, that's supposed to be my role. So, I don't know about that, but he thinks it's his role. He was right. I was wrong. But as soon as I got to see this guy in action, well, I knew he was right for the role. And he was special, no question about it. And I hope you guys enjoy it. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. So after you found out that you didn't get the Abe Relis part, how was the movie for you, making the movie? Did the disappointment still sting, or did you just say, hey, it's a job, I've got the leading role? How did you feel about that?
Well, Peter Falk was, he was sensational.
Yes.
And broke me up, and so I had to just do to him. I had to, yeah.
You gave him his props.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so forth. It was interesting. I was saying to Stu, you know, obviously Peter Falk did get the part, and he was nominated for an Academy Award in that debut. But I really thought that Stu's part with Britt, and that was really the invented part of the story that kind of gave him its human humanity, and it wasn't a straight documentary. That, I thought you and her were really the spine of the movie, and I thought you were terrific in it. I really believe. And watching the movie, I don't know how long it had been since you saw that. Did anything come back to you? Any particular recollections of making the film and working with some of the actors like Henry Morgan and Peter and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I'm still in the film.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's hard to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Coney Island, and I know Brooklyn, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that part was all real. And
Yeah. Well, certainly the Relish part of it was real because actually in real life, they had the goods on Lepke, but they were trying to make a case against Albert Anastasia, who appeared, they had him appear briefly, and somehow Relish did become the canary that could sing and couldn't fly. He had 25 police guarding him and went out the window of the Half Moon Hotel, as shown in the movie, and no one knew anything. And as it turned out, the murder case against Anastasia disappeared. And of course, the mayor at that time, a guy by the name of O'Dwyer, he was very relieved. And Frank Costello, who was called the prime minister of the underworld, kept picking judges in New York. So yeah, there was a lot of that. But you got a call the year after that for another movie, when you were under contract, The Mark. Tell us how that, and that was your turn to shine. How did that work for you in getting the part in The Mark?
I had no idea what the role was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
and no idea what the script was like.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call from the agent. I was shooting a test film in at the studio at Fox, and my agent at the time said, "Don't go." I was in bed with an incredible actress.
Shooting a scene. I'll clean this up a little bit here.
Thank you. And I was going to work for quite a special director, an Englishman. And so I went to the telephone, and my agent said, "Don't go back to bed with that lovely girl. Don't do that." And I said, "But I want the role in this film." And he said, "No, Richard Burton is tied up in Broadway, and they've accepted you to play in this picture. We're going to shoot it in Ireland." And so I went, and I knew that the guy was probably right. My agent was probably right, because he was a strong agent. He also handled Richard Burton, so though I could see that they were squeezing me into that role.
Right.
And he said, "Go home, pack your bags, and catch this flight at Los Angeles."
To England.
At the airport.
Right.
And take off. And so I did. I took my orders and I took off. I had no idea what the script was like. I hadn't seen the script, and I got to the hotel in London, and the place was loaded with press, and they wanted to know what I felt about doing this film. I said, "I haven't read it. I had no idea." So if you please all excuse yourselves from this room, then I'll have a chance to read it, and then you can all come back and I'll tell you what I feel about it.
That's a hell of a position to be put in.
Really.
Yeah.
And I finished reading it, and I said, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this."
By the way, the picture was The Mark, and the role that Stu was reading for was that of a child molester. And this was 1961. So continue.
And trying to think how I could get out of doing this movie. I didn't want to do it. It was a real test. The other ones I've been faking my way through.
And so I went across the street and to a pub there and thought I'd have a couple of beers and see if I could sort it all out. And I asked for a beer, I'll never forget it. And I took a swallow of it, and it was warm. That was my first trip to England. They like warm beer. Why? But they do. And I spewed it all out of everybody at that bar. I went ahead and did the movie, and Guy Green was the director, and he helped me out, and Maria Schell and Rod Steiger. It was
Pretty good company.
And we shot it in outside of Dublin.
Did you have any idea that you would be nominated or the film would do that much for your career at that time?
Not at that time. Near the end of the film, I got a call from the writer of it. And he said, I think you might get an Oscar on this role.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, yeah, sure, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well.
Did you hear about it on the radio, or did someone call you, or
No,
how did that work?
I was living in North Hollywood at the time. I was driving over the canyon,
Over the hill.
over the hill.
Yeah.
And that's when I heard it,
Right.
on the radio.
Right.
I almost drove off the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
It was a big moment in my life. It certainly was.
Absolutely, absolutely.